Hero equipment added tons of variability to how Clash of Clans is played, but not all hero equipment comes together to make good combinations. In this video, we're going to be talking about the best combinations of hero equipment and talking about the best synergy between different pieces of equipment. I'm also going to be breaking down the stats of the Giant Gauntlet and then talking about how to upgrade it, as well as how epic equipment could affect the synergy of heroes in the future. First of all, let's break down why this is an important conversation in the first place. Different pieces of equipment have different optimal uses, and thus they just don't pair as well together. For example, the giant arrow is best used in the beginning of the attack to get the best value, but the invisibility vial is probably best used in the middle of the base to get the best value. Thus, these would not be an optimal combination and have bad synergy together. Now that we understand this concept, let's talk about each hero and its equipment combinations. Now, to get an easy one out of the way, the Royal Champion only has one combination. I do expect that we will get some additional equipment for the Royal Champion later on though, so this is definitely something I'm going to be talking about later. Okay, next up we have the Barbarian King, which at the time of release of this video has the most pieces of equipment at 5. Now, there are a few viable combinations for the king. With the Barbarian Puppet, you can use the Earthquake Boots because they will give access to the other barbarians to do damage. Using the Rage Vial with the Puppet actually wastes this ability, since the Barbarian just takes out buildings a lot faster, leaving a lot less for those smaller barbarians. The Vamp Stash is also less viable because the Barbarian is simply going to get less hits because of all the smaller barbarians. Therefore, the Barbarian Puppet and the Earthquake Boots are a decent combination. The better combination, in my opinion, is the Vamp Stash and the Rage Vial. The Vamp Stash not only gives you a heal per hit, but it also gives you faster attack speed, meaning that you heal faster. The limiting factor for the Vamp Stash is the movement speed, which is covered really greatly by the Rage Vial because it gives you a ton of additional movement speed. This is perfect combination and really good synergy for the king. What about combinations with the brand new epic equipment, the Giant Gauntlet? Now, if we look at the stats for the Giant Gauntlet, it gets an insane amount of DPS, a generous health regeneration, as well as a crazy incoming damage reduction. Now, if we were to pair this with the Barbarian Puppet, it might affect both pieces of equipment since the barbarians kind of get in the way. You could think of using it with the Vamp Stash, which would honestly be nice because you get that extra attack speed. The movement speed, however, is a big problem here though, so I would almost always recommend using it with something like a haste spell just to speed it up. On the other hand, we have the Rage Vial. It adds even more DPS, but it allows the king to move faster, which would help take the advantage of the limited giant ability and the splash damage that you get at this time. Not to mention the instant health regeneration, which can't hurt. So in summary, the best combinations for the king are the Puppet and the Earthquake Boots, the Vamp Stash and the Rage Vial, and the Giant Gauntlet with the Rage Vial or the Giant Gauntlet with the Vamp Stash. Next, let's go ahead and talk about the Archer Queen and the best combinations for her equipment. To start off, we have the Archer Puppet. Now, personally, I think this is one of the worst equipments in the game, but if you had to use it with something, I'd recommend using it with the Invisibility Vial since it can offer some health recovery. This synergizes well with the power of the Invisibility Vial. Ironically, this is also the old Archer Queen ability, so go figure. Now, if you're trying to make the most out of the magic arrow, then you need to use it super early in your attack. Thus, I wouldn't go with the Archer Puppet or the Invisibility Vial and instead opt for the Healer Puppet. The reasoning behind this is simple. You can start your attack with a huge giant arrow and then follow it up with a makeshift queen charge from your healer puppet. And at max level, these two pieces of equipment together can give you about 50% more health on your queen, which is insane to think about. This combination has great synergy and really allows both pieces of equipment to shine. This leaves the Invisibility Vial as the last piece of Archer Queen equipment. I've already mentioned how it doesn't go well with the giant arrow because it limits the arrow's strength. It does go nice with the Archer Puppet due to the health regeneration that the puppet provides, but the archers can also be an attractive target for splash defenses like the Scatter Shot. When it comes to the healer puppet, the self-heal can help you during the invisibility period, and the extra hit points is nice, but if your queen is on its own and goes invisible, those healers are gonna disappear immediately. It is hands down the best piece of individual equipment for the queen, but it is also the hardest thing to match with another piece of equipment. My recommendation though would be to use it with the healer puppet most of the time and try to get it so that those healers are not targeted. Alright, now we need to talk about the last hero, the Grand Warden. The Warden easily has the most generally applicable set of equipment, and the synergy between the pieces are amazing. You'd be a fool not to include the Eternal Tome as one of your equipment pieces for the Warden, but no matter what else you pair it with, it goes extremely well. There are some caveats though, so I'm going to point out some of those right now. Now when it comes to the Rage Gem for the Warden, it gives the Warden a lot more DPS, which makes it really bad to use with E-Drags since it'll take the buildings out before the E-Drags charge up for an attack. The Rage Gem works well with troops like the Dragon that are tanky but require a little more oomph to get through the base. Consider using haste spells to speed up the progress here. On the other hand, the Healing Tome works really well with troops that are glass cannons, or in other words, they have high DPS but low hit points. An example of this would be the Hog Riders. The Life Gem really works well with everything and is generally a good piece of equipment, but I think it's a bit outclassed by the other ones. In particular, the Healing Tome, which is really good due to its overall heal, as those of you who watched my ranking equipment videos already know. Basically, you would use the Eternal Tome with either the Rage Gem or the Healing Tome, depending on the attack that you're using for that base. Okay, now that we've discussed the best synergy and combinations for the hero equipment that have come out in the game, let's go ahead and talk a little bit about the Giant Gauntlet. The cost for this piece of equipment creates a really interesting trend. The shiny ore costs have an initial investment period where things get expensive fast until level 8 and then they stabilize just like the common equipment. The glowy ore cost also grows and then completely stabilizes, which is also indicating an initial investment period. However, the starry ore prices increase almost exponentially. Now despite how this looks, this is actually really good. This means that you're limited by the shiny and the glowy ores in the beginning, which are a lot more accessible, but then you're limited by the starry ores late, which are obviously more rare. This shouldn't be too much of a problem though, since starry ores can only be used on epic equipment. Thus, just upgrade this piece of equipment whenever you can and then wait for these starry ores, since they'll be your main limiting factor later on. I know that a lot of you might be demotivated by the amount of days it's going to take to max this piece of equipment, but think about it as a long-term investment that you're going to invest into when you do have starry ores once in a while. In terms of whether or not the equipment is good, at max level it increases the DPS of the king by 33%, gives it enough self-heal to heal its entire HP over a single attack, and reduces damage by 60% for 18 seconds. Used through a key portion of the base, this could nullify a lot of the damage in that base and thus serve as a huge damage shield for attacks. This is overall just a really good piece of equipment, and I think it'll really show in strong army compositions as the damage shield really comes out at that point. Now in terms of priority, I don't think it's as important as the Eternal Tome, but I would put it above the Invisibility Vial because it could do more damage overall by itself. Now with all of that being said, you guys now know the best combinations of hero equipment in Clash of Clans. But this won't mean anything to you if you don't know how to upgrade equipment and how to do so efficiently. That's why you guys need to watch this playlist right here, which breaks down all of the stats and analysis and literally everything you would want to know about equipment in Clash of Clans.